The alien girl moved without a sound. Her skin was pale blue, her hair wild like vines, her eyes sharp like a hunter. She had lived alone in the jungle for years. No one came here. No one dared, except. Now a human had entered. He had arrived. 2 days ago, just walked into the forbidden zone like it was nothing. No armor, no weapon ready. Just a small pack, a long coat, and something in his hand that glowed at night. She had watched from the trees as he made a camp near the cliff wall. He made fire with strange tools. He cooked his food. He even talked. To himself, she didn't understand why he was here. Most who came this deep into the wild never came back. They were taken by the shadows. The forest here had predators that didn't leave bones behind. But this human? He whistled while boiling water. At first, she thought he was stupid. Then she started to think he was crazy. But now she was curious. From a high branch she crouched, unmoving, eyes locked on him. He was roasting something over the fire, humming a soft tune. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Then the forest fell silent. Her eyes widened. No bugs, no birds, no wind. Just stillness. She had felt this before, once, when she was younger. That time, she barely escaped with her life. It meant only one thing. The apex predator was near. She looked at the human. He paused, lifting his head, sensing something was wrong. He slowly stood, looking toward the dark trees. He should have run. She wanted to scream at him, warn him, but she stayed silent, always silent. That was how she survived. Then the trees moved. Something massive walked through them. She saw the thick shadows shifting, slow steps, like a mountain walking. The air grew colder. The human reached for a stick. Not a weapon, just a stick. What was he doing? He didn't shout, didn't scream. Instead, he stepped away from the fire and moved toward the sound. She held her breath. A heavy growl rolled through the jungle, deep, angry, old. The predator was right there, just behind the trees. Its golden eyes glowed through the leaves. The human didn't run. He knelt. He dropped the stick. Slowly, he opened his pack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Meat. Warm. Fresh. He placed it on the ground, then backed away, hands up. The alien girl trembled on her branch. She had never seen anything like this. She knew the predator. It didn't take gifts. It didn't spare prey. But this time, it did. The massive beast stepped into view, huge black scales, thick legs, long neck, and curved horns on its head. Its mouth was full of teeth as long as daggers. It could swallow the human whole, but it didn't. It sniffed the meat. Then it sniffed the air, smelled the human. Growled again, and still. The human didn't move. After a long moment, the predator grabbed the meat and stepped back into the trees. The jungle swallowed its shape. Only the sound of crunching bones remained. The forest stayed quiet. The human walked slowly back to his camp and sat near the fire. His hands were shaking. He looked scared, but alive. The alien girl blinked. What had just happened? She had lived in this place her whole life. She knew the rules, knew the danger. But that human just changed everything. Who was he? Why did the apex take the food and leave him alone? She stayed up all night, eyes fixed on the human. She didn't sleep. Couldn't. She remembered her tribe, long ago, telling stories of a silent bond. They said there were rare moments, very rare, when the forest accepted a stranger. When even the predators knew not to touch them, but she had never seen it happen. Until now. The next morning, the human found claw marks near his camp. Deep ones. From the beast. He just stared at them for a long time. Then, he smiled and whispered, "See you again, big guy?" The alien girl didn't understand him, but she understood this. The human was not normal. Not weak. Not stupid. He had been accepted. The jungle had watched him and allowed him to stay. She gripped the branch tightly. Maybe, just maybe, she could get closer now. but only if he proved himself again. Because the jungle had one rule: trust was earned, or it was eaten. The human didn't scream, not even when the trees behind him cracked like bones. He stood in the clearing, frozen, 1 foot still over the fire pit he was building. The alien girl watched from above, hidden in the thick leaves. Her breath was stuck in her chest. The jungle had gone silent again, not the soft silence of sleep. This was the cold silence of fear. She could feel it in her bones. The thing was back. The apex predator. Bigger than anything alive in this forest. Stronger than anything that hunted. Older than the stories whispered in her tribe. And it was here. The trees groaned as something massive brushed against them. The smell of wet stone, blood, and old bones filled the air. And yet, the human didn't run. He turned, calmly, slowly, and he smiled. What was wrong with him? The alien girl's claws dug into the branch. She had seen fear. She had smelled terror. But this man was calm, curious. He reached into his coat and pulled something out. A glowing stone? No, it was soft. It pulsed red. Warm meat again. This time, the predator stepped fully into the clearing. Her breath caught. The beast was even larger than before. Its dark scales shimmered with morning mist. One eye was glowing gold. The other was scarred shut. A long cut ran down its face. It limped slightly. It was hurt. The human knelt. He placed the meat down, then reached into his bag again, this time pulling out something white. A bandage, clean, smelling of sharp herbs. No sudden moves, buddy, the human said softly. He didn't know she was listening. He didn't know he had 2 predators watching him now. The apex predator lowered its head. Its nostrils flared. It could crush him with one snap of its jaws, but it didn't single quotes t. Instead it growled. In pain. The human moved closer. Every muscle in the alien girl's body tensed. One wrong move and he'd be gone, but he didn't move wrong. Placed the bandage on the ground, then backed away again. The beast sniffed it, growled again, then slowly lay down. Its massive head touched the dirt. Its injured leg was bleeding. The wound was deep, but not fresh. It had been limping for a long time. The human slowly walked forward and reached for the leg. She wanted to scream. Don't touch it. But she stayed silent. He pressed the herbs to the wound, wrapped it in white. His hands were steady, gentle, like he was caring for a child. The predator made a low rumble, but didn't bite. The girl had never seen anything like it. No one touched an apex predator and lived. But this human, he didn't just live, he helped. Minutes passed. When the human stepped back, the predator stood again, tested its leg, then looked at him. Their eyes met. Man and beast. And then the predator made a sound, not a growl, not a warning. It was soft, a low purring noise, deep and strange. Then it turned and vanished into the trees. Leaves closed behind it. The jungle slowly returned to life. The human sat down. He didn't speak, didn't smile. He just sat still, breathing hard. As if it had finally hit him how close he came to death. The alien girl dropped from her tree. She stayed hidden in the lower bushes, eyes wide. The stories her people told about the ancient ones, the old hunters, were real. The apex were not just beasts. They were guardians, spirits in flesh, protectors of the forest's law. And now, one of them had accepted this outsider that could not be ignored. Still crouched in the bush, she stared at the bandage the human had used. It smelled strange, but not bad. Warm, clean. She reached forward and took a piece of the old cloth he'd left behind. The human didn't see her. He was too deep in thought. She held the cloth to her chest. Something inside her had shifted. This human had done what even her tribe never dared. He had touched death and been spared. He had helped the apex predator and earned its respect. She looked up at the sky. Maybe, just maybe, he was not a threat. Maybe He was a key dot to something more. The jungle was alive again, birds called. Wind danced through leaves, creatures whispered from the trees. But something had changed. The alien girl moved quietly along the branches, high above the forest floor. Her sharp eyes followed every step. The human took. Not out of fear anymore, but something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or something deeper. She had seen him touch the untouchable, heal the unhealable. He had looked the apex predator in the eye and wasn't eaten. That meant something. To the forest. It meant he belonged. To her. It meant maybe he wasn't like the others. She watched him kneel near a stream. He filled a small bottle with water, then paused. He looked down at the mud. Huge claw marks dragged through the soft ground. Heavy, deep, fresh. The predator had passed through here. Not long ago. Instead of panic, the human crouched beside the track and ran his fingers over the indent. Hurt leg. Still limping. He muttered. He was tracking the beast. Not to hunt it. To check on it. The alien girl tilted her head. She had never seen a human behave like this. Most were loud, careless, greedy. They came with machines. They took what they wanted. But this one was following tracks, not leaving them. Helping, not harming. She crept closer. The wind shifted. He paused, looked up. His eyes scanned the treetops. She ducked, heart racing. Did he see her? He stared a moment longer, then smiled. I know you're there, he said softly. Thanks for the feather. Her breath caught. The feather. The one she had left by his camp, from the singing bird. It was a sacred sign of thanks in her culture. She thought. He wouldn't understand, but he had placed it in his bag. Not thrown it away. Not burned it. He had kept it. Slowly she climbed down from the tree. Not all the way, just a little. So he could see her eyes through the leaves. He didn't move, didn't raise his hands, didn't speak again. He just waited. For the first time she stepped into the sunlight. Half hidden by ferns, her skin glowed soft blue. Her eyes were wide and alert. Her hair tangled with twigs and small flowers. She was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. Like the forest itself, the human looked at her like she was a friend, not a monster. She stepped forward once. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small wooden bowl. Slowly, he poured clear water into it and set it down, then stepped back. The girl looked at the bowl, then at him, testing him. She crouched, sniffed the water, then drank. Just a little. Still watching him. He smiled. See? Clean, he said. She didn't understand his words, but his tone was gentle. Not a command. Not a threat. Then, carefully, she pulled something from her belt. A small root. Shaped like a curled snake. She placed it on a rock near him, a gift. A rare healing root, used by her people to treat poison. He looked at it, surprised. Then nodded, serious. Thank you. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. The forest hushed. Even the wind paused. And then, a sound broke the moment. A deep growl. Far away, familiar. The apex predator, but this time, it wasn't alone. Another growl joined it. Higher, younger. The girl froze. Her eyes narrowed. She whispered in her own language. Younglings. She turned to the human. He had heard it too. Their expressions matched, alert, ready, but he didn't run. He looked at her, and in that moment, she knew he would follow the sound, even if it meant danger, even if it meant death. He cared. She couldn't believe it. But it was true. He cared about them. The girl looked at the tracks in the mud. Then looked at him. And for the first time, she nodded. Just once, quick, small, but it meant everything. She accepted him. As not just a visitor, but as part of the wild. And that meant she would guide him. She turned, signaling with her fingers, then vanished into the trees. The human smiled and followed, quiet as the shadows. He didn't expect her to come back, But she did that at dawn. The jungle was covered in soft gold mist. Birds chirped. Leaves dripped with dew. The human sat beside the fire pit, staring into cold ashes. Waiting. He didn't move much. Didn't make noise. Just sat. Listening. And then soft footsteps. Careful, light. He looked up slowly. She was there, not hiding in shadows this time. Not crouched behind vines or up in the trees. She was standing right there, at the edge of the clearing. Her skin shimmered blue and silver in the morning light. Her long fingers held something wrapped in leaves. Her violet eyes locked on his face, watching, testing. The human stood up gently, hands open. No weapons. No sudden moves. Morning, he said. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward and placed the leaf bundle on a flat rock near the fire pit. He slowly moved closer, unwrapping it. Inside was meat, cooked, smoked in the jungle way. A gift. He looked up, eyes wide. Thank you, he whispered. She tilted her head, unsure of his words, but she saw his expression. He was grateful. That was enough. Then, the moment came. She stepped closer, and he didn't move. She stopped just a few feet away, close enough that he could see the small scars on her cheek, the tiny flowers tangled in her hair, the careful way she breathed, ready to bolt. But she didn't. Single quotes. Instead, she raised one hand. Not a weapon, not a strike, just open fingers, a gesture of peace. He copied her. Their hands hovered in the air for a second. Then gently, just gently, their fingertips touched. Like lightning. A silent connection. First contact. She didn't speak, but her eyes said enough. I don't trust easily, they said. But I trust you. A little. He nodded. Then stepped back, giving her space. She crouched by the fire pit, curious. She watched as he sparked the fire. He showed her the tool. He used 2 stones clicking together, sparks jumping. She reached out, touched it. She wasn't afraid. She was learning. They sat together, fire crackling between them. She mimicked his posture, tilting her head whenever he spoke, trying to understand. He pointed to himself. Eli. She looked confused. He touched his chest again. Eli. She paused, then slowly raised her hand and touched her own chest. Lura. A name. He smiled. Lura, he repeated. She blinked, surprised. Then, almost smiled back, not with lips but with her eyes. The first wall was down. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from the trees. Both turned. Lura stood quickly. Eli didn't move. She listened, tense. Then her eyes widened. She ran toward the sound. Eli followed. They pushed through vines, over roots, down a narrow path until they reached a clearing. Lura dropped to her knees. There beneath a tree lay a small creature, a baby predator. It was the same species as the apex she had shown Eli before. But this one was smaller. Blood dripped from its side. Its leg was twisted. Breathing shallow, she whispered something in her own tongue. Eli knelt beside her, heart pounding. The young predator growled softly, too weak to move. Its eyes were filled with pain and fear. Lura reached to touch it, but it flinched. She looked at Eli, unsure, helpless. He took a slow breath, reached into his pack, pulled out the same herbs he used before. Lura watched as he crushed them, mixed with water, and carefully rubbed them onto the creature's wound. It whimpered. She placed her hand on its head, whispering softly. They worked together, no words, just action. Trust. Lura used jungle vines to make a small splint for the broken leg. Eli bandaged it. The baby's breathing slowed. Its growls stopped. It was resting. The two looked at each other, still kneeling in the dirt. Something had changed. She didn't see a strange invader anymore. She saw someone who cared. Someone who stayed. Someone who didn't fear pain or blood or beasts. That evening, back at camp, she sat beside him, not across from him. The fire glowed. Night creatures whispered in the trees. She picked up a stick and drew shapes in the dirt. Her home, her tribe, her exile. He watched. Not a dot. Then he drew to his home, his ship, the crash. They couldn't speak the same words, but they understood. Two strangers. Two survivors. One shared purpose. And as the stars turned above them, Lura finally whispered something in his language. One word: friend. The forest should have been quiet. Instead it was dead. Not even the wind moved. No birds sang, no insects clicked. No leaves. Rustled. Eli noticed it first. He crouched beside the stream, washing his hands when he froze. A cold feeling crawled up his spine. He slowly looked around. Lura, he whispered, standing up. She was nearby gathering fruit. But when she saw his face, his stillness, she knew it was happening again. But this time, the silence was different. This wasn't the apex predator's silence. This was worse. The jungle was holding its breath. Lura dropped the fruit and ran to him. Together, they listened. And then far in the distance, a sound tore through the trees. A scream, not human. Not beast. Something. In between, Lura's heart pounded. She grabbed Eli's arm. We must go, she whispered. But Eli didn't move. His eyes were on the trees, watching. I know that sound, he muttered. From my world. We called it a bone crawler. Lura's eyes widened. She had never heard that name, but she knew what it meant. The elders used to speak of it, quietly, fearfully. A hunter of hunters. A shadow that devoured even the strongest. She thought it was a story. Until now. They ran fast through the brush. Not back to camp. Not to safety. They ran toward the sound, because the baby predator they had saved was still out there. Alone. Injured. Helpless. Lura didn't think. She just ran. Eli followed without hesitation. The closer they got, the colder the air became. Then they saw it. Trees snapped like twigs. A heavy trail of crushed vines and claw marks carved into the earth. And blood. Too much blood. Lura dropped to her knees at the edge of the clearing. The baby predator was there, whimpering, bleeding but alive. Just barely. And standing over it was the thing. Tall, thin, black as ash. Bones showing through its stretched skin. Its limbs too long. Its mouth opened from ear to ear. No eyes. Just teeth. Endless teeth. Eli's breath caught. It turned slowly, sensing them. Smelling them. The bone crawler. The jungle's death. It growled, a horrible sound like metal scraping inside. Flesh. Eli grabbed a flare from his belt and lit it. The sudden light burned bright red. The creature screamed, clawing the air. Lura lunged forward, scooping up the baby predator in her arms. Move! Eli shouted. They ran. Behind them, the trees shattered. The creature followed fast. Too fast. Branches cut their skin. Roots tried to trip them. The flare was dying. The light dimmed. The growling got closer. Lura stumbled, but Eli caught her. They reached a fallen log and crawled under it, holding their breath. The bone crawler stopped just feet away, sniffed the air. Then it turned. A deep growl answered it. Another shape stepped into the clearing. Huge, dark, horned. The apex predator. It was back. It roared a roar that shook the earth. The bone crawler turned its head. Slowly, then it leapt. The two monsters collided. Fangs against claws. Roars against screeches. Blood sprayed. Trees fell. The jungle exploded with violence. Eli and Lura crawled back, dragging the baby predator between them. They hid behind the rocks and watched. It wasn't a fight. It was a war. The apex predator, already injured, was losing. The bone crawler bit into its leg, tore flesh, cracked bone. But then, the apex twisted, grabbed the bone crawler with its jaws and slammed it into a tree. Again. The bone crawler screeched and fled into the dark. Silence returned. The apex predator dropped to its knees. Breathing. Heavy. Bleeding. Lura stepped forward. It didn't growl. Didn't threaten. It looked at her. And then at Eli. The human stepped closer. He saw the wound deep across the chest. Slowly, he reached into his pack. He cleaned it. Wrapped it. Like before. But this time, the apex didn't flinch. It accepted him. Lura touched the baby predator's head. It was watching, too silent, calm, a family of monsters, and they had accepted a man, a human. In that moment, the forest changed. Eli was no longer an outsider. He was part of the jungle now, a protector, like them. Lura stood beside him, her arm brushing his. She didn't pull away. And in the fading light, as the apex predator rose and limped back into the trees, something powerful was left behind. Not a roar. Not a growl, but trust. It came at dawn. A roar. Not footsteps. Not even a warning. The air simply changed, like the jungle itself held its breath. Eli was sitting by the fire, sharpening a stick. Lura sat nearby, plucking strange fruit, feeding. Tiny pieces to the baby predator curled beside her. They were quiet, calm, safe. For once. Then the trees parted. Slow, heavy, final. The apex predator stepped into their camp. This time, it didn't hide in shadows. It didn't growl. It stood tall. Wounded but proud, scars glowing in the rising sun. Its golden eye scanned the scene. It saw Eli, saw Lura, saw its own young, resting in peace between them. And it walked forward. Eli stood. He didn't reach for his flare. He didn't run. Lura stepped beside him, eyes wide, heart racing. This had never happened before. Even among her people, the apex predator was worshipped from afar. A sign of strength, a symbol of the wild's law. But never had one come into a camp, never had one bowed, because that's what it did. The beast stopped in front of Eli, bent its thick front legs, and lowered its head. Its horns touched the ground. Its breath was warm and deep. Eli blinked. Lura gasped. She whispered in her language, "It has chosen." Eli didn't understand the words, but he felt them. The air shimmered with meaning. The apex predator nudged Eli's chest gently with its nose. Then rose again. And turned. Behind it stood something they hadn't noticed before. Others. 6 more apex predators watching in silence from the trees. Tall, powerful, fearsome, and yet none growled. None attacked. They waited. Then, one by one, they stepped forward. Not to challenge, but to witness. The first predator, the injured one, the one Eli had healed, let out a soft sound. Not a roar. Not a warning, a call. From the trees, smaller shapes appeared. Youngls. 10 or 12 baby predators, walking carefully between vines and moss, approached and circled Lura and Eli's camp. Eli's hand trembled. Lura placed hers over it, steady. The baby predator they saved stood and limped toward its siblings. It was weak, but it stood tall. The others sniffed it, nudged it, welcomed it back. Then something incredible happened. One of the elder predators, dark green scales, thick with age, walked forward and dropped something in front of Eli. A large bone, smooth, polished. A gift. Lura's eyes filled with tears. "It's the mark of the wild," she whispered, voice shaking. "My people told stories, but I never believed." "What does it mean?" Eli asked softly. Lura turned to him, eyes shining. "It means the jungle has accepted you. You are not prey. You are not stranger." She paused. "You are chosen." Eli crouched, picking up the bone. It was heavier than it looked, ancient, etched with claw marks and symbols. The apex predator stepped closer again. And slowly nuzzled his shoulder. Eli couldn't move. His eyes burned, but he didn't cry. Not yet. Lura stepped forward, placing her hand beside his on the gift. And in that moment, something passed between all of them. Not just trust, not just respect, but bonding, a bond between predator, protector, and people. The jungle was watching, and it approved. The elder predators turned one by one and disappeared into the forest again. But the injured one, the one who had started it, all remained. It looked at Lura and nodded. Then it looked at Eli and let out a short, low call, a sound that echoed across trees and water and leaves. A blessing. The apex predator turned to its young and slowly began to walk away. The baby predator they had saved looked back once, just once, and followed, and then they were gone. The forest closed around them. Lura and Eli stood in silence. The fire popped gently between them, and then Lura whispered, "The old stories say, when the predator bows, even the sky listens." Eli looked up at the sky. A soft breeze passed through the camp. The trees rustled. And for the first time he whispered back, "Then I guess we were meant to meet." Lura didn't answer. She just reached forward and took his hand. No more fear. No more hiding. The jungle had chosen. So had she. The jungle had a rhythm again, but it was different now. Calmer, warmer, like the trees were breathing softer, like the air had learned to trust. Eli walked beside Lura, the polished predator bone tied across his back. It shimmered in the sunlight, like a silent crown. Wherever they went now, the jungle opened paths for them, quietly, respectfully. Animals didn't run. Birds didn't hide, because the forest knew them. They were no longer strangers. They were part of it now. It had been 3 days since the apex predator left their camp. 3 days since the blessing. But its echo still lived in every shadow, every breeze. Lura led the way now, no longer hiding in trees or behind leaves. She walked tall, chin lifted, her soft blue skin catching flecks of golden light. She didn't wear fear anymore. She wore purpose. She was going home, back to the village that had cast her out, back to the tribe that said she was too curious, too wild, too close to the things that no one dared touch. And this time, she wasn't going alone. The path to her people was long, winding between cliffs and rivers. Eli had never seen the stone arches or vine bridges that marked her homeland. He watched in silence as they passed under hanging moss and tall, sacred trees carved with symbols. Lura didn't speak, not until they reached the gates. 2 tall warriors stood there, armored in bone and leaf. Their spears crossed at the entrance. They saw her, and their eyes widened. "You were lost," one said quietly. Lura shook her head. "I was found." Then they looked at Eli. They tensed, gripping their weapons. But then they saw what was tied to his back, the mark of the wild. They froze. Whispers began behind the gate. More villagers appeared. Faces old and young, curious, angry, afraid. The elder stepped forward, a tall woman with silver lines on her face and a staff made of living wood. "You bring a human into sacred land," she said, voice cold. "I bring the jungle's will." Lura replied calmly. The elder's eyes narrowed. "Prove it." Eli stepped forward. He didn't speak. He simply reached for the bone on his back, untied it, and placed it gently on the stone platform in front of them. Then he stepped back. The elder looked at it, studied it. Then gasped. She knelt. One by one, others followed. The warrior guards dropped their spears and bowed. Because they saw the truth. The jungle had chosen him, not through blood, not through battle, but through bonding. Only those who were touched by the apex predator itself could carry that mark. Only those who had earned trust, not with strength, but with heart. Lura turned to Eli. Her voice was low. "You could go home now, if you still want to." He looked at the trees, at the soft sky, at the people, bowing in silence. Then he looked at her. "I am home." Her eyes shimmered. No words were needed. Later that night, firelight danced through the village. Music drifted between huts. Children laughed. Old warriors sat silently, Watching Eli with respect they once swore only for gods. Lura stood beside him. Her people had accepted her again, not because she changed, but because she believed in something they had forgotten. That trust could be stronger than fear, that sometimes the wild chooses those who listen, not those who command. As the night grew darker, the sound of heavy footsteps came from the jungle's edge. Every head turned. The apex predator stood there, just beyond the firelight. Silent. Watching. Lura stepped forward, hand over her heart. Eli joined her. The predator let out a low rumble. Then from behind it, another stepped forward. A cub. The same youngling they had saved. It approached the village slowly, sniffing the air. Then walked straight to Eli, pressing its head gently against his hand. Eli smiled, and without fear, he whispered, "Welcome back." The villagers gasped, but no one moved. They watched the impossible happen. The wild had walked into their home, and bowed. From that day on, they called Eli something new. Not outsider, not human, but forest brother. And beside him, they called Lura what she had always been, the one who listened. They built no statue, no temple, but the forest didn't need one, because deep in the trees, where predators once ruled alone, the wind now carried a different sound. A story of a girl who trusted. Of a human who stayed, and of a bond so strong, even the wild itself bent to honor it.